Om Tavakatamritam Taptajivanam Kavipiriditam Kalmashapaham Sharavanamangalam Shrimadatatam Bhuvingarnantiye Burida Janaha. The nectar of your words, the praise of poets seers, elixir to parched souls, delight to listening ears, cleanser of all sins, is great and glorious. They who spread it far and wide on earth are most generous. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening, friends. Today we will be continuing our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And we are in the middle of a conversation with Sri Ramakrishna and some Avari devotees that came and asked him a question, what is the way? And he mentioned two ways, one by knowledge and one through love. That one can approach God through knowledge or discrimination and love. Now he's telling them at the moment that discrimination, first he's describing discrimination. He hasn't actually, we haven't covered the love aspect of it yet, but he's telling them that one must discriminate between what is real and what is unreal, what is transitory and what is more permanent. What is the most permanent thing in the world? Well, that is what the whole the practice of discrimination is about. And he's described it as something that needs to be practiced every day, consistently, because the mind naturally wants to attach itself to the things of this world. It wants to claim things that, oh, this is mine, that is mine. It tries to bring things close to you because to give yourself a sense of comfort. Also, the ego wants to express itself. It wants to feel that I'm important, or it wants to feel that the people around me are important, or I want to be around important people. So the sense of this I-ness. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that, no, there's something more permanent than the things of this world and even our own ego. So through the path of knowledge, through discrimination, we try to identify what is real, and then we renounce what is unreal. And he says this has to be done as consistent practice, because you might renounce something, saying, oh, this serves me no purpose, but the next moment the mind attaches itself to it again. So it's like constant reminding. It's like a drip from the tap. It's just going to keep on dripping, and you might tighten the faucet and slow it down and think you fixed the problem, but the tip, it'll start to drip again until you get to the real cause of the problem. And the real cause will be, well, the ego wants to express itself somehow. And so, but we need practice. You may not be a plumber, but you might need to practice at home how to become a plumber. So you might read some books, how to take apart the faucet and fix it. So also you're going to have to learn how to fix our view of the world, our view of ourselves. So that is discrimination. And then he says, then by the will of God, well, first he's saying we have to do this mentally, renounce mentally what is not real. But that's just like the dripping water from the tap. It's something we constantly have to work at to fix it until we get to the real cause. Then we can renounce. And then when we finally fix it, we're satisfied with the problem is fixed, then we have actually not just renounced mentally, but we have renounced physically. And then that comes by the grace of God, by the will of God. I finally realized, oh, I can't do this on my own. Hire a plumber, or learn how to do it on your own and fix it without breaking it. So now the next part we're reading, he says, through this discipline of constant practice, one is able to give up attachment to lust and gold. That is what the Gita says. So this idea of constant practice has a term. It's called abhyasa yoga. So, and here he says that this is what the Gita says. So, Lord Krishna is given a teaching in the Gita, and it's in chapter 8, verse 8. It goes like this. Abhyasa yoga yuktena cetasa nanyagamina paramam purusham devyam yati parta nuchintayam. So what does it mean? With the mind not wandering after anything else, made steadfast by the yoga of constant practice, he who meditates on the supreme resplendent Purusha reaches him. So, with the mind not wandering after anything else, thinking only of God, absorbed in the thought of God, meditating on God alone, he loses body consciousness of his own body, loses a sense of ego, he realizes God. All through practice, just by constant practice of remembering God, discriminating between what is unreal, what is real, or through sincere love and devotion to God. So, through the discipline of constant practice, one is able to give up attachment to lust and gold. Well, lust and gold, Ramakrishna consistently reminds us, is the obstacle, the main obstacle to realizing God. Lust and gold will mean intense desire, intense greed to maintain you think that your body is the most important thing, so you'll do whatever you can to keep this body alive, keep your ego intact, and you will do so at the risk of great suffering, because the world will always try to take things away from you. And so then you'll try to get it back. So it'll be this constant struggle, mental struggle and physical struggle, to be able to let things go. They aren't yours, they never were. So part of the discrimination is not just that this is not real or this is real, that is not mine, that is not mine. That belongs to God. It always was God. I have only a very temporary existence in this world. Why am I trying to claim so much of it as mine? It all existed before I came into this world. How can I say, oh, this is mine, that is mine, that person belongs to me, these things belong to me? Even though I feel it, I work really hard in my job, made a lot of money, purchased these items, and now I treasure them. Well, it'll take a flood, a storm, whatever, you've lost everything. How many cars get lost in a flood down in the southern parts of the States, or when there's a cyclone? Homes are destroyed. Homes that you've treasured, items in the house that you treasured, heirlooms, reminding you of your family, and all kinds of things just gone. Suddenly you are forced to renounce. But if you can do this consciously, then when those things happen in real life, they won't have that same sudden impact that you'll say, oh yes, that's by the will of God. I've lost it, it's gone back to God, one way or the other. And you won't be having that same sense of misery of loss, that suffering. Because you understand the nature of this world. It's a combination of joy, of acquiring, and suffering when it's taken away. And if you can't give it up willingly, God will take it away. because he knows that's not yours, it never was. And so, but we can mentally prepare ourselves through this practice. And when we reach the higher levels of that practice, then we realize that God is more important than all these things. So that's why he says that through this practice, by this practice, one acquires uncommon power of mind. That ability to say, okay, this is not mine, you'll give it away. Well, question, if somebody else needs it, you'll give it away. And you'll be able to do so without regret, without attachment. That's uncommon power of mind. Most people can't do that. And if one can also renounce things that easily and relinquish ownership, then one doesn't find it difficult to even subdue the sense organs and to bring anger, lust, and the like under control. So when one can renounce things, even external objects, then one can also understand that, well, when the desire for something comes to the mind, you can let go of the desire without having to acquire it first and then say, oh, I don't need it anymore, let it go. You can, just a thought, oh, that thought's not going to help, I don't need it, and you let it go. The anger will come when somebody tries to impede your desire and say, no, you can't have this, but you really want it. Well, if you can relinquish the desire, there won't be, the anger won't be there either. You won't be upset of not being able to acquire that object. So, and then lust. You won't have that intense desire of satisfying every desire that comes to your mind, because you realize, well, that was never mine. It belongs to God. If I'm attracted to a woman, think of her as she's a child of God. She's my sister or mother. Sri Ramakrishna looked on all women as mother and worshiped them as the Divine Mother, because he saw the essence of the Divine Mother in all of them. And he was more attached and attracted to the Divine Mother than to the human form. And so that allows us to reduce that lustful urges. For women, it would be the same as men. They can look on man as being a symbol of Shiva. If they think, no, Shiva's, I'm more attracted to that godly aspect than the human aspect. So they too can then reduce that sense of lust or attachment. So, but all of that is practice. And when practiced, and he says that when everything is brought under control, such a man or woman behaves like a tortoise, in which, once it has tucked in its limbs, never pulls them out. I don't know if you've ever seen a tortoise, and just frightened a little bit, it pulls in its legs and its head. There's nothing you can do. Can't turn it upside down, you can't do anything. It will not pull out any limbs or head. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, you cannot make the tortoise put its limbs out again, though you chop it to pieces with an axe. I don't know, I don't know if that's where he saw that, but I guess it must be true. He said that they will not, for no reason. So also, when our mind is under control, for no reason, nothing can pull us out of that sense of self-control or divert our minds from God. Because we will feel that at this point, you also don't have body consciousness, that you feel that you need to satisfy bodily urges and that kind of thing. So naturally, once all that comes under control, that your attachment to God, your love for God, is even more intense than anything you could love in this world. So, and even though we're talking about spiritual matters here, if you take a worldly example, someone who wants to play a musical instrument, here you will have to sacrifice a lot of things just to acquire love of God, or even to try to understand God, renouncing all these worldly things. But so also a musician or a person that wants to play a piano, for example, is going to need time to practice. He won't be able to play with his friends, surf the internet, play video games. He's going to have to renounce that because he's determined to play that instrument as well as he possibly can. But there will be obstacles. Sometimes today he doesn't feel like practicing. Other days he will. Other days he might feel inspired. But through that practice, he will develop a love for the music. When one practices dispassion and renunciation, one's love for the world gets turned into love for God, because that feeling of love is still in our mind, but it's not directed to the world. But for a musician, he'll practice whether he's in a dump or whether he's in a fancy hotel or on a stage. All he cares about is the music and perform it to the best of his ability. But if he offers that music to God, then it becomes a much higher form. That's his connection to God. Others will connect it to the audience for appreciation. Well, then that's their ego that wants those things. So yes, you might do all that practice and self-sacrifice just to bolster your ego because you want to be famous, or you can do it as an act of love toward God. The musician that does it for name and fame does it for love of himself. But in that process, he also realizes that, in fact, he gets the best compliments, really, when his ego is not attached to the music, when he shows humility, that he realizes, no, the music is there, but at some point, even he does not feel that he's performing. It's almost like it all happens automatically, and all he's thinking about is the emotion that's being evoked by the music. And sometimes even that takes the musician to mental heights that he did not realize he could experience. And then even that, he realized, oh, he feels that that's perhaps bringing him closer to God. So, in fact, anything that we practice and put effort into, even on the worldly plane, can lead to higher realizations that, no, even this belongs to God. And by the grace of God, I have been able to express my love, either through music or through through knowledge, through whatever worldly act is possible. But the idea being always, you lose yourself in it. You become ignorant of your ego. You cannot think of all you can think of is God, or something, some essence of something bigger than yourself. So in a world where we want instant gratification, we think, oh, we want things quickly. But even a musician has to practice 8 hours a day or more for years. What to speak of a spiritual aspirant who thinks, oh, I want to realize God. I read all these holy books. It sounds like a great thing to aspire to. And you think, oh, maybe in a year or 2 or 5 years, I should have some realization. But we have so many things going on in our mind that it's a slow process. Very few people can make quick progress, but it's slow, consistent progress, slow and consistent practice. And that builds fortitude, it builds endurance, it builds, it establishes a sense of commitment that, yes, I think this is important, so I will put in the effort and the time. So now the Mawari devotee asks, "Revered Sir, you just mentioned two paths. What is the other path?" And the Master says, "The path of bhakti, or zealous love of God. Weep for God in solitude, with a restless soul, and ask Him to reveal Himself to you." And then he sings part of a song. "Cry to my mother Shyama, cry to your mother Shyama with a real cry, O mind. And how can she hold herself from you?" So this path of bhakti, we take this sense of self-love that we have, and we try to turn that around into love of God, loving something higher than ourselves. So whatever aspect of God we are attracted to or feel a desire to become closer to, or whatever aspect of God inspires us, we should develop love, and a stronger love and attachment to that aspect of God, thereby reducing our attachments to the world. We cry for many things in the world, but what if we cried for God? We cry out of misery, but if we also sometimes shed tears out of love for the suffering of humanity, or for love of a spouse or our children. We cry at their suffering, and we want to relieve their suffering. But what if we cry to God, and understand that God is present in all beings, that we will feel that we are crying at the misery of humanity, and we want to alleviate that misery. But seeing that our attachment to God, our desire to love God, will also make us forget ourselves. But actually crying for God as if that's what you really want, you want nothing else, then the scriptures say, the Sri Ramakrishna says that God will reveal Himself to you. So, but then we look on God as a personal God. Before we were just reading about discrimination and renunciation, but there was no image involved. So there wasn't anything that we could actually focus our senses on. So a Mawari devotee is now asking, "Sir, what is the meaning of the worship of the personal God? And what is the meaning of God without form or attribute?" So someone that is following the path of bhakti, they try to develop love toward a personal God, looking on Krishna, for example, as God, but not just as a person, but as someone as a human representation of what is humanly possible to attain if they follow basically the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, or looking into his life. What are devotees of Lord Krishna have such love for them that they forget their own troubles, that all they can think of is how to serve Krishna. But they see Krishna in all beings, so in a sense they are serving everyone as Lord Krishna. They're looking upon, they see Lord Krishna in everything in the world. So they are not seeing human beings as individuals. They are seeing that Krishna inhabits every human being, and that is what they are worshiping. That is what they are serving. So that is following, looking on God, on having a personal God. So that, in that case, God has form. But God has also attributes. Krishna, you love Krishna. Krishna kind of reciprocates that love to the devotee. So you feel that you are Krishna's beloved. You are Krishna's favorite. So you look on God with form and there are attributes. So the Master is saying, as you recall your father by his photograph, so likewise the worship of the image reveals in a flash the nature of reality. So if you're looking at your father or mother or any beloved person, you look at a picture, what are you recalling? It's not just a picture. It's the memories behind the picture. It's the love you have for that person. It is the experiences you've had with that person over your lifetime. So that image, it evokes emotion. It evokes attachment. So if you have an image of God and you have all that going, also that kind of respect, that kind of love toward an image of God, then you will feel closer to God through that image. And not as you watch, even as you see the picture of your father, you're also thinking of all the attributes, the virtues of that. So, but when you look at the image of an image that represents a God, you're not just looking at human attributes, you're magnifying those attributes as, yes, your father might have some faults, but when you look at an image of Krishna, you're saying, oh, this is the most virtuous of all human beings, the most loving. It's always going to be a view of God without any faults, with superhuman capabilities. So it'll be like the strongest person, the most loving. So, and then because of that, you will feel that you want to give all your love, all your respect to that person. So you will glorify them. There are people that glorify their parents. So that my father's the greatest, my mother's the greatest mother. So because all they see are the virtues, and that's because they have such love for that person. So also, when you have such love for God, all you can speak about are the highest virtues of God. So, and that, so much so that you don't even see the world as humans see it. All you see is God. So now Sri Ramakrishna continues, do you know what God with form is like? Like bubbles rising on an expanse of water, various divine forms are seen to rise out of the great akasha of consciousness. The incarnation of God is one of these forms. The primal energy sports, as it were, through the activities of a divine incarnation. So out of this consciousness, this world is created, and the lowly human beings, yes, but also the divine incarnations, the saints, the prophets, they're all like, he's just describing them, they're all like bubbles on this ocean of consciousness that take form and then dissolve back into the consciousness. So the incarnation is one of these forms, the primal energy behind all this consciousness, as it were, sports through the activities of a divine incarnation. The primal energy sports, as it were, through the activities of a divine incarnation. So we look on Lord Krishna as a divine incarnation, amongst others. So they are trying to expound teaching about God to basically the little bubbles. So, because the little bubbles think they are separate from God, but in reality they're all part of that great consciousness. They don't have individual identity. But because they think they have individual identity, they suffer. So these divine incarnations are trying to tell them, no, think of yourself as part of the cosmic consciousness. There is no suffering. You don't need to suffer. But just remember that you are not individual. You're not different from me, from the cosmic consciousness. So Swami Ramakrishna continues, what is there in mere scholarship? Here he's talking about worldly knowledge, also spiritual knowledge. What is there in mere scholarship? God can be attained by crying to him with a longing heart. There's no need to know many things. So the essential thing is somehow to love God. But also, the world has so much to know, to understand in this world, and yet it's transitory. But if you're trying to understand something that is not transitory, that is permanent, that will give you lasting satisfaction, as opposed to something that is always transitory. So you get it, you lose it. So you'll be crying more out of misery for losing things. But if you actually cry to or pray to acquire God or consciousness of God, then that's all you need to do. You don't need all these individual details. And what about all the scriptures? Those are all like pointers to what God is. But even knowing all the scriptures will not help you realize God unless you practice those things. And that's where this idea of constant practice. Practice those teachings and make them part of your life. Then you will experience what it means to realize God. Then he continues, he who is an acharya or teacher has to know different things. One needs a sword and shield to kill others, but to kill oneself, a needle or a nail knife suffices. So in order to teach others about God, you need to understand all different points of view of how God can be looked at from so many different points of view, understand the scriptures, be able to argue, be able to convince. So you have to have a large body of knowledge. And there'll be many obstacles. You'll have to know how to overcome different obstacles along the way. And that's where he says you'll need a sword and shield to kill others. Well, if you need to argue with others or to substantiate your point of view, you're going to have to be able to quote the scriptures, you're going to have to be able to quote from experience. But if you are just an individual who has no intention of teaching, but you just want to practice, well, you don't need to know a lot of things. There are some essential things that you need, and one of those is just love of God, developing love of God, or discriminating between what is real and unreal. And then using the scriptures as guideposts, because different saints and seers have gone through this path And the scriptures basically explain what you will experience at different levels. You will know where you stand. So one ultimately discovers God by trying to know who this I is. Is this I the flesh, the bones, the blood, or the marrow? Is it the mind or the buddhi? That means, is it the mind or is it the intellect? Analyzing thus, you realize at last that you are none of these. This is called a process of neti. Not this, not this. This is not real. That is not real. That is temporary. So this is the process of discrimination. So one can neither comprehend nor touch the Atman. It is without qualities or attributes. Once you've eliminated everything, including your ego, all that remains is the Atman, your soul, and that has no attributes. And at that point, it has merged into this cosmic consciousness, the cosmic or this primal energy. You are just, everything is God. There's no individuality any longer. And that is following the path of discrimination and renunciation. Then he says, but according to the path of devotion, God has attributes. To a devotee, Krishna is spirit, his abode is spirit, and everything about him is spirit. The Marwari devotees saluted the master and took their leave. At the approach of evening, Ramakrishna went out to look at the sacred river. The lamp was lighted in his room. The master chanted the hallowed name of the Divine Mother and meditated on her. Then the evening worship began in the various temples, the sound of gongs floating on the air, mingling with the murmuring voice of the river. Peace and blessedness reigned everywhere. So this is the end of the chapter, and I will conclude here. If you have any questions, while I give the announcements. So tomorrow evenings at our retreat, Swami Brahmatmananda, via Google Meet, will continue his discourse on discussion or reading on the book Towards the Goal Supreme. And this Friday at 7 p.m., Swami Satyamananda will be continuing with a series on self-knowledge, the Atmabodha. This will be class part 6. That will take place here in the chapel. And this Sunday, actually the Sunday, we will have a guest speaker, Swami Vimohananda. He'll be visiting us en route to another center, I'm not sure where, but he'll be visiting us and giving the talk on this Sunday. And his topic will be the story of Sri Ramachandra's birth. In other words, Sri Rama. Rama was considered also an incarnation of God before he lived before Lord Krishna. And Swami Vimohananda will also be doing some singing along with it, some singing songs devoted to Lord Krishna, or to Lord Rama. And in the evening, Sunday evening at 7 p.m., we will also be having devotional songs to Lord Rama here in our chapel, as we will be singing Ramnam. And that will go on for about 1 hour, both online and in person. You're all welcome to attend. So I will conclude with a chant. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukamparitavigraham Vaye Ishavataram Paramesamidhyam Tvam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha.